News from New York City, I'm Paul DeRienzo. In local news, last week, New York City Mayor Eric Adams appointed the first Muslim American civilian to the Handsch Committee, a police spying oversight board made up by NYPD brass and one civilian. The committee was formed after two federal lawsuits alleged improper investigations into the Muslim community following the 9/11 attacks. The committee is the outgrowth of a lawsuit brought against the city in the 1970s by lawyers and activists who were targeted by the cops' notorious Bureau of Special Services, or BOSS, the intelligence division of the NYPD, that focused police scrutiny on non-political activists and lawyers. The agreement that arose from the lawsuit by the mid-1980s was known as the Handsch Agreement. It was named after a young attorney, Barbara Handschu. After 9/11, as government spying engulfed Muslims in New York, Handschu wanted her name removed, but a judge said no way. The agreement wouldn't be the same without her. Barbara Handschu spoke with the news in an exclusive interview conducted on Tuesday.
Mine was a personal event. I had been the lawyer for the Young Lords Party, and as such, I was very involved with things that were happening, for instance, the takeover of the church with the guns and things like that, and it was very obvious to me that I was being watched. I also was involved with one of the people in the Young Lords, and I ended up marrying Bobby Lemus. And I'm sure that was another reason I and he were both targeted. And one of the ways that I was certain that I was the target, I was prepared. I ran my law office out of home. And I was on my home phone, which was my only phone in those days, working with a witness and preparing her for court. I put her on in court, went through the direct examination, and then the district attorney got up, and his first question was a very pointed question that could only have been asked if he was aware of my conversation with her. She was asked specifically how much of the various substances had been put into the so-called bomb that these two young men were supposed to have in the back seat of their car. So at that point, I did the only thing I knew how to do. I was a baby lawyer, and I just yelled, "Objection, move for a mistrial." And it turned out probably 6-7 years later, the federal courts did reverse the conviction based on the fact that there had been surveillance of my phone, because the district attorney would not answer my question to him, and then the judge posed the question, has there been any surveillance by your office? And he said no, and it may have been that there was surveillance by another office, maybe the federal government. That was one of the reasons that my affidavit went in.
Just by chance, happenstance, you got to be the first name on the list of people.
They chose me as first. I also had worked on a lawsuit in terms of legal work. They felt it was an honor to bestow upon me.
For a young lawyer, it's pretty heady. I mean, you're just out of law school, basically.
It sure was. Stayed that way.
It turned out that there was widespread out-of-control spying by the NYPD against pretty much everybody. Did we ever learn what the roots of that spying was? Was it just something that was going on in every precinct, or was it centralized?
It was centralized, and they definitely had targets. The targets in more recent days became the Muslims and the mosques. They put informers into the mosques and hoped to get information.
Right. And that was a continuation. So with Handschu, you had this Handschu board. All of a sudden, there was some sort of oversight going on.
There were 3 agreements that come out of the lawsuits. The first one was probably in the mid-'80s. I think it was 84. And the next settlement was right after, or 2 years after 9/11. And at that point, what they did was to take the original settlement and watered it down, claiming that the activities of 9/11 had to give more leeway to police to conduct surveillance to protect people. I hated that settlement. I really did. I hated the fact that my name was attached to it. And I wrote a letter to the judge. I didn't make a motion because it really would have taken me too much time. And I didn't think it would be successful. I wrote him a letter and I said, could you please remove my name? I don't approve of this settlement. And moreover, I'm living and working in Buffalo. And he sent me back a letter saying, while this isn't a motion, I'm not granting your request. It's going to stay that way. And about 3 years ago, which was the most recent settlement, the judge permitted statements to be made by people in the community. I was one of them, and he said at the end of it, I'm glad I never let you take your name back because it would have sounded very strange for this to be anything but the Handsch settlement. And that was the settlement with the Muslim cases. I like that settlement much better.
What's wrong if the police keep an eye on legal activity? They just want to make sure troublemakers don't get in there.
Right now, you and I are conducting a very private conversation. You may choose to make it more public. That's fine with me. I give you my consent. But they have no right to listen to that conversation. We're not talking about anything unlawful. We're not talking about anything that would give the police any reason to surveil. I was active in the women's rights community. It was the days when abortion was illegal. I was speaking all over the country about things like that. I've been active representing children, straight legal work, and I don't think I've been watched as much. But who knows?
Your view of this new appointment, Mr. Faridi, do you think that the Handsch Agreement has done what you thought was necessary? Was it enough?
The appointee is magnificent. I understand he's a brilliant young lawyer, and I think he'll do a great job. He's very independent, and he will be one independent voice. And as far as I know, the committee and the newest settlement is doing something. I've not heard many reports of any problems. I know they've brought some cases in for review, but I have not heard any problems. It's making them behave better on the police side.
Barbara Handschu is the namesake of the Handsch Committee, a watchdog over spying by police in New York City. You can hear the news at paulderienzo.com. From New York City, I'm Paul DeRienzo. Thanks for listening.